The planet Valora was known for its beauty and peace. Its people, the Valorians, lived quiet, gentle lives under the rule of Queen Aelira. She was young but wise, kind yet strong, and she cared deeply for her people. Valora was far from other planets, untouched by wars or invasions for as long as anyone could remember. But all that changed when the Xeric Empire arrived. The Xeracs were ruthless, a race that conquered without mercy. They were huge, armored warriors with dark, scaled skin and a hunger for control. They traveled from planet to planet, taking whatever they wanted, enslaving anyone who dared to fight back. Now, they had come to Valora, and they saw it as an easy prize. Their ships appeared suddenly in the sky, blocking out the sun, casting shadows across the beautiful Valorian cities and fields. Valora was not ready to fight such a force. Queen Aelira watched from the palace as the enemy ships landed. Her advisors tried to tell her to hide, to protect herself, but she refused. Her people needed her, and she would not abandon them. Her heart was heavy with fear, but she stood tall, determined to defend her home. The Valorian soldiers were brave, but they had never fought in a real war. Their weapons were simple, and their defenses were weak compared to the advanced technology and firepower of the Xeracs. Within hours, the Xeracs took control of several cities, capturing anyone who tried to resist. The people of Valora were scared and confused, and Queen Aelira felt powerless against this powerful enemy. But then, news of a mysterious visitor spread through the palace. A human, from a faraway planet, had recently arrived on Valora. His name was Captain Jack Reynolds. He was a tall, rugged man with sharp eyes and a calm confidence that made others feel safe. Unlike the Valorians, Jack was a soldier, experienced in battles. He had seen countless wars and had fought against stronger enemies than the Xeracs. Jack had come to Valora on a mission of exploration, but now he found himself in the middle of an invasion. When he saw the destruction caused by the Xeracs, Jack knew he couldn't just stand by and watch. He felt a sense of duty to help these innocent people. He made his way to the palace, requesting a meeting with Queen Aelira. When Aelira met him, she was surprised by his calm confidence. He didn't look like a hero, dressed in simple armor, but there was something strong in his gaze. "I'm here to help," Jack said, his voice steady. "I know how these invaders think. If you'll allow me, I can teach your people to fight." Aelira studied him, trying to decide if he was trustworthy. She could see a hint of kindness in his eyes, a quiet strength that gave her hope. She knew that the Valorians were outmatched, but with Jack's help, maybe they stood a chance. The Valorian Council, however, was less enthusiastic. They didn't trust outsiders, especially one who spoke of war and battle. Some whispered that he was just a wanderer, here to take advantage of their desperation. But Aelira ignored their doubts. She had made her decision. She led Jack to the Valorian soldiers, introducing him as their new commander. Jack didn't waste time. He started training them in guerrilla tactics, showing them how to strike fast and hide before the enemy could respond. The soldiers listened, absorbing every word he said. They learned to use their surroundings, to make traps, and to work together as a team. As Jack trained the Valorians, he also grew closer to Aelira. He admired her bravery, her willingness to protect her people despite her fears. She, in turn, felt comforted by his presence. He was not only a soldier but also a friend, someone who understood the weight of leadership. The Valorians were still scared, but now they had something they hadn't had since the invasion began: hope. They were ready to fight, led by a human who had come from a distant world. Jack was more than just an outsider now. He was their ally, their guide. And perhaps in time, he would become something more to their queen as well. The Valorian soldiers trained hard under Jack's guidance. Day by day, they became stronger, quicker, and braver. Jack taught them ways to fight that were completely new to them. Unlike the Xeracs, who relied on brute strength and powerful weapons, the Valorians learned to be swift and clever. They practiced moving silently through forests, hiding in plain sight, and striking before the enemy even knew they were there. Jack's methods were tough, but the Valorians respected him. He never asked them to do anything he wouldn't do himself. Queen Aelira watched their progress with pride and a glimmer of hope. For the first time since the invasion, her people weren't living in constant fear. But the threat was far from over. The Xyric forces were still powerful, and their leader, Commander Krell, was as ruthless as he was cunning. Krell had captured many planets, and he saw Valora as just another victory. But now, with Jack's help, Aelira began to believe they could fight back. One evening, after a long day of training, Jack and Aelira stood on a balcony overlooking the palace grounds. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the land. They could see the soldiers below, some resting, others talking quietly. For a moment, it was peaceful, and Aelira allowed herself to relax. "You've given us hope, Jack," Aelira said softly. "I don't know how to thank you." Jack looked at her, his gaze steady and serious. "You don't need to thank me. I couldn't just watch while innocent people were being hurt. I may be from a different world, but I know what's right. And right now, that means standing with you and your people." Aelira felt a warmth in her chest, something more than just gratitude. Jack had come to their aid without asking for anything in return. He was risking his life for people he barely knew, and that made her feel both admiration and something deeper. As the days passed, the resistance started to see small victories. Using Jack's strategies, they launched surprise attacks on smaller Xyric patrols, capturing supplies and freeing Valorian prisoners. Word of these victories spread across the land, and people began to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could win. But it wasn't just the victories that changed the Valorians. It was the way Jack fought alongside them. He didn't stay in the palace, safe and protected. Instead, he was always on the front lines, risking his life alongside the soldiers. The Valorians saw his bravery and started to see him as one of their own. Even the council, who had been doubtful at first, began to respect him. Despite the progress, Jack knew the real challenge was yet to come. The Xyrics were bound to notice the Resistance's attacks sooner or later, and when they did, they would strike back with full force. Jack warned Aelira of this during a council meeting, his voice firm and serious. "We're making a difference, but it won't be long before Krell realizes what we're doing," he said. "When that happens, he'll come after us harder than ever. We need to be ready." Aelira nodded, understanding the weight of his words. She looked around at her advisors, her face calm but determined. "We have no choice. If we don't fight, we lose our home, our freedom. We'll be ready." After the meeting, Aelira found Jack alone in the palace garden, deep in thought. She approached him quietly, her footsteps soft on the grass. "You've done so much for us, Jack," she said. "But I know this isn't your fight. You don't have to stay if things get worse." Jack turned to her, surprised. "And leave you to face the Xyrics alone? Never. I made a promise to you and your people. I'm not going anywhere." Aelira felt a strange mix of relief and happiness. She realized that she had come to rely on Jack, not just as a warrior, but as a friend. Maybe even more than a friend. But she pushed those thoughts aside, reminding herself of her duty to her people. "I'm grateful," she said softly, looking away to hide the emotions in her eyes. "We all are." Jack nodded, understanding without words. In that moment, they shared a quiet bond, a promise unspoken but felt deeply by both of them. As the night fell over Valora, Jack and Aelira stood together, watching the stars. They knew the battles ahead would be even harder, but they also knew they wouldn't be facing them alone. The human and the queen, two unlikely allies, were now bound by a shared purpose, and maybe by something more. The Valorians grew braver and stronger with each passing day. Thanks to Jack's guidance, they now had the skills to strike quickly and disappear before the Xyrics could react. They were no longer just defending. They were fighting back. Small victories began to pile up, and word spread across Valora that the resistance was succeeding. Villagers and townsfolk who had once felt helpless now felt a spark of hope. For the first time, the Xerax felt pressure on a planet they thought would be an easy conquest. Queen Aelira was inspired by the strength of her people. She walked among the soldiers, giving words of encouragement, offering smiles to those who looked weary, and reminding them of what they were fighting for. Every time she spoke, the Valorians felt their courage grow. They saw her as their beacon, their hope in dark times. And by her side, Jack became their symbol of strength and bravery. He was tireless, always willing to risk his life in the field, fighting shoulder to shoulder with Valorian soldiers. As Aelira and Jack continued to work together, their bond deepened. Jack respected her fierce dedication to her people, while Aelira admired his strength, his calm under pressure, and his selflessness. They often found themselves talking late into the night, sharing stories of their worlds and dreams for peace. Jack listened to her worries, reassuring her whenever she felt overwhelmed. For the first time, Aelira felt she wasn't carrying this heavy burden alone. But the Xyric leader, Commander Kroll, was not a fool. He noticed the growing resistance and felt insulted by the Valorians' defiance. How could a peaceful planet like Valora stand up to the powerful Xeric Empire? Kroll ordered his soldiers to hunt down the rebels, and as they walked back to the palace side by side, a quiet thought crossed her mind. Maybe, just maybe, they could build something together after the war ended. The Valorians' victories were a source of hope, but also a growing threat to the Xerax. Commander Kroll was furious. His powerful army had never faced this much resistance from a small, peaceful planet, and he was especially frustrated with the human, Captain Jack Reynolds, who had become a thorn in his side. Kroll knew he needed to strike back hard, or risk losing his hold on Valora. What the Valorians didn't know was that Kroll had a secret weapon, a spy hidden among them. This spy, a Valorian named Tavik, had been working with the Xerax from the beginning. Tavik was a trusted advisor, part of Aelira's inner circle. He was clever and quiet, the last person anyone would suspect of betrayal. But Tavik was driven by greed, not loyalty. The Xerax had promised him power and wealth if he helped them crush the resistance, and he had agreed without hesitation. One evening, Tavik managed to slip away from the palace and meet with Kroll in a hidden location. There, he revealed important details about the resistance, their hideouts, their supply routes, and most importantly, the movements of Queen Aelira and Captain Jack. Kroll listened with a sinister grin. Armed with this information, he planned a brutal counterattack to end the resistance once and for all. The next day, Jack and Aelira were in a council meeting, planning their next move. Jack was confident. Their recent victories had weakened the Xyric forces, and he believed they were close to a major breakthrough. But just as the meeting ended, a messenger burst into the room, his face pale with fear. The Xerax. They've attacked our western base, and they knew exactly where to find it. It's as if they had a map of our defenses, he gasped. Jack's face hardened. It's impossible. How could they know our plans? Aelira's expression was filled with worry. We must have a traitor among us, she whispered. She looked around the room, her heart sinking as she realized that someone she trusted had betrayed them. Before they could uncover the traitor's identity, another report arrived. The Xerax had launched an attack on the main resistance camp. This time, they captured several key leaders and supplies. It was clear that the Xerax had planned these attacks carefully, using information only an insider would know. With every attack, the resistance weakened, and morale among the soldiers dropped. The Valorians began to lose hope, whispering in fear that their cause was doomed. Jack felt the weight of their despair, but he refused to give up. He met with Aelira in a quiet corner of the palace, determined to reassure her. We can't let this break us, he said firmly. Whoever the traitor is, they won't win. We'll find them, and we'll keep fighting. Aelira nodded, though her heart was heavy. I trust you, Jack. Without you, we wouldn't have come this far. But this betrayal, it hurts more deeply than I can say. Just as Jack was about to respond, a loud alarm echoed through the palace. Soldiers rushed into the room, and one of them shouted, "The Xereks have broken through the palace defenses. They're here for the queen." Jack's heart raced. This was more than just a typical attack. The Xereks had come with a clear goal: capture Queen Aelira and crush the resistance at its heart. He turned to Aelira, determination in his eyes. "You need to escape. They're after you." But before Aelira could respond, Xerek soldiers stormed into the palace. Jack grabbed Aelira's hand, pulling her through the halls as they dodged enemy fire. Despite his best efforts, they were soon surrounded, trapped with no way out. Krull himself entered the room, his armor gleaming, his cruel smile widening as he looked at Aelira. "Ah, the mighty queen," he sneered. "You've caused me more trouble than any ruler before. But now it ends." Jack stepped forward, shielding Aelira. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me." Krull laughed. "That's the plan, human." With a wave of his hand, he ordered his soldiers to seize Jack. Jack fought with all his strength, but he was outnumbered. The Xereks restrained him, forcing him to his knees. Krull looked down at him with disdain. "So, you're the human causing all this trouble. A shame you wasted your life on a hopeless cause." Krull turned to Aelira. "I'll give you one chance, Queen. Surrender your kingdom, or watch this human die." Aelira's heart pounded as she looked at Jack, her mind racing. She couldn't bear the thought of him being harmed, but surrendering would mean condemning her people to slavery under the Xereks. She looked into Jack's eyes, seeing the calm resolve there, and knew he would rather fight than see her surrender. Taking a deep breath, Aelira lifted her chin. "I will never surrender to you, Krull." Furious, Krull ordered Jack to be taken to a Xerek prison camp, far from Valora's lands. As the soldiers dragged him away, Jack managed to catch Aelira's gaze, giving her a small, reassuring nod. "Stay strong, Aelira," he whispered. "This isn't over." Aelira watched him go, a fire of determination burning in her chest. She wouldn't let the Xereks win, and she wouldn't abandon Jack. She would find a way to save him, no matter the cost. Queen Aelira felt the weight of Jack's absence like a dark cloud over Valora. The resistance had lost its strongest leader, and morale was at an all-time low. Many believed that without Jack, their cause was doomed. But Aelira refused to let despair consume her. She knew that giving up now would mean letting the Xereks win, and she could not betray the bravery Jack had shown. He had risked everything for her people, and now she would do the same for him. The first step was uncovering the traitor. Aelira gathered her most trusted advisors and ordered a secret investigation, questioning anyone who had access to sensitive information. The palace was tense, with whispers filling the halls as everyone tried to figure out who could have betrayed them. But Aelira remained silent about her suspicions, knowing she had to tread carefully. Then, one night, Aelira received an anonymous message slipped under her door. The note read, "The traitor is close to you, closer than you think." Her heart sank as she thought of her trusted advisors and friends. Who among them could have betrayed her? As she held the note, her gaze turned toward Tavik, the quiet, loyal-seeming advisor who had never stood out. He had always been by her side, quietly watching and advising. Could he be the traitor? Determined to find the truth, Aelira called Tavik to meet her in a secluded part of the palace. Under the cover of night, she confronted him, her voice cold and steady. "I received a warning," she said. "Someone close to me has betrayed us to the Xereks. Do you know anything about this, Tavik?" For a moment, Tavik looked startled, his expression faltering. But he quickly masked it, putting on a look of innocent shock. "My queen, you know I am loyal to you. I would never betray you or our people." But Aelira saw the hesitation in his eyes. Her instincts told her that something was wrong. She stepped closer, her gaze sharp. "Loyalty means nothing to a traitor, Tavik. You have one chance to tell the truth." Tavik's face hardened, and he realized he could no longer hide. With a sneer, he admitted, "Fine, Yes, I told the Xerix your plans. But I did it for the promise of power. Why should I stay loyal to a queen who can't protect her people? Aelira's heart pounded, a mixture of anger and sorrow swirling inside her. She had trusted him, and he had betrayed everything she held dear. But she forced herself to remain calm. You have betrayed not only me but your own people, she said. And for that, you will face justice. Tavik laughed bitterly. Justice. With the Xerix in control, you won't be queen much longer, Aelira. I only did what I had to for my own survival. But Aelira was prepared. She signaled to her guards who were hidden nearby. They stepped forward and seized Tavik, taking him into custody. The traitor was finally exposed, and with him, Aelira now had crucial information about the Xerix plans. However, Aelira knew this was only the beginning. She still had to rescue Jack, who was now held in a heavily guarded Xeric prison camp. She felt a deep responsibility to free him, not only because he was a hero to her people, but also because he had come to mean more to her than she had ever expected. Gathering her most skilled fighters, Aelira devised a plan to break into the prison camp. The mission was dangerous, and her advisors begged her to reconsider, fearing for her safety. But she was determined. Jack risked his life to save Valora. I will not abandon him now. We need him, and I need him. Under the cover of darkness, Aelira and her team moved swiftly through the forests, following the path to the Xeric camp. They wore dark cloaks to blend into the night, moving with silent determination. Aelira led them with fierce focus, her mind set on rescuing the man who had changed her life and given hope to her people. As they approached the prison, Aelira's heart pounded. The camp was heavily guarded, with Xerec soldiers patrolling every corner. But Jack had taught her well, and she knew they had the element of surprise on their side. Quietly, the team took out the guards one by one, moving closer to where Jack was being held. Finally, they reached his cell. Aelira looked through the bars and saw Jack, bruised but still strong, his eyes lighting up when he saw her. Aelira, he whispered, both surprised and relieved. She smiled, unlocking the cell door. I couldn't leave you here, Jack. You're needed now more than ever. Jack stepped out, giving her a nod of gratitude. Thank you. I knew you wouldn't give up. But there was no time to waste. They quickly made their way out of the camp, fighting off guards as they went. Aelira fought with a strength she hadn't known she possessed, fueled by the hope of saving her people and standing beside Jack once again. As they escaped into the forest, a sense of victory filled the air. They had reclaimed their leader, and with him, a new sense of purpose. Aelira and Jack shared a glance, a silent promise between them that they would fight together until Valora was free. With Jack back among them, the Valorians' spirits soared. Hope returned to the people, and soldiers rallied, ready for one final stand against the Xeracs. Word spread quickly across the land, and villagers who had once hidden now took up arms, joining the resistance with fierce determination. Aelira felt her heart swell with pride as she watched her people rise, united and strong. She knew this was their best chance to reclaim Valora. Jack and Aelira spent days preparing for the battle ahead. They planned every detail, knowing that this would be the fight to decide Valora's future. Jack trained new recruits and shared tactics, teaching the Valorians how to use the Xerac's own strategies against them. Aelira, meanwhile, led meetings with village leaders, inspiring everyone with her bravery. Together, they formed a formidable team, one that even the mighty Xerac Empire would find hard to defeat. As the day of the battle drew closer, Jack and Aelira took a moment to themselves. Standing on a hill overlooking Valora's lands, they watched as the sun set, painting the sky with colors of orange and pink. For a moment, everything felt calm, even though they knew the storm was coming. Jack looked at Aelira, admiration in his eyes. You've come so far, Aelira. Your people follow you not just because you're their queen, but because you've shown them what it means to fight for freedom. Aelira smiled softly. I couldn't have done it without you, Jack. You showed me that strength comes from within, and that courage is found in the heart." She paused, her gaze steady. "I'll always be grateful that you came to Valora. No matter what happens, know that you've changed our world forever." Jack's expression softened. "And you've changed mine. I never thought I'd find a place that felt like home outside my own world. But here, with you, I found something worth fighting for." They shared a quiet moment, understanding the connection they had built through their trials. But they knew there was no time to dwell on these feelings. The battle was upon them, and they had a duty to protect their people. The next morning, the Valorian army assembled, ready to face the Xerax. They marched across the fields toward the Xyric base, their determination clear in every step. Jack led from the front, his presence a steadying force among the soldiers. Beside him, Illyra walked with her head held high, a queen willing to fight for her people. The Xerax were waiting, their massive force spread across the battlefield. Commander Krell stood at the front, his gaze cold and unforgiving. He sneered as he saw Illyra and Jack approaching, his confidence unshaken. "You think you can defeat us, little queen?" he called out. "Your resistance is nothing more than a nuisance." Illyra stepped forward, her voice strong and fearless. "You underestimated us, Krall. Valora may be small, but we are a people who will fight to the end for our freedom. Today, you will learn that power is not measured by size, but by the spirit within." Krall laughed, dismissive. "Brave words, but words won't save you." With that, the battle began. The clash was fierce and chaotic. The Xerax fought with heavy weaponry and advanced armor, but the Valorians had agility, strategy, and an unbreakable will. Jack moved through the battlefield like a storm, guiding the Valorians and adapting to the Xyrax's every move. Illyra fought beside her people, her determination unwavering. She wielded her blade with precision, her courage inspiring those around her. Hours passed, and the battle wore on. The Valorians took heavy losses, but they held their ground, refusing to yield. The Xyrax, unused to such fierce resistance, began to falter, their confidence shaken by the unrelenting resolve of the Valorians. At one point, Krell singled out Illyra, a cruel smile on his face as he advanced toward her. "Your resistance ends here, Queen," he snarled, swinging his weapon with deadly force. Illyra met his attack head-on, her movements sharp and controlled. She dodged his strikes, retaliating with her own. But Krall was strong, and it became clear that he was trying to wear her down. Just as he was about to land a crushing blow, Jack appeared, blocking the attack and forcing Krall back. "You're not fighting her alone," Jack said firmly. Together, he and Illyra stood side by side, a united force against the Xyric leader. Krall's confidence turned to anger as he realized he was facing both the fierce queen and the skilled human. He fought desperately, but the combined strength and teamwork of Jack and Illyra proved too much. Together, they drove him back, finally forcing him to the ground. As Krall lay defeated, Illyra addressed him one last time. "This is the end of your tyranny, Krall. Valora will be free." With Krall defeated, the remaining Xerax began to retreat, their morale shattered. The Valorians let out a victorious cheer as they watched the invaders flee from their land. They had won. Valora was free. As the battlefield quieted, Jack and Illyra stood together, exhausted but victorious. They had fought for their people, their home, and each other. In that moment, they knew that Valora's future was bright, built on the foundation of courage, resilience, and unity. And for the first time, they allowed themselves to dream of a future together, one where peace and love could finally flourish. With the Xerax finally defeated, Valora was filled with a rare and cherished feeling. Peace. The scars of battle still marked the landscape, but the people's spirits were bright. They had won their freedom, not just through strength, but through unity and resilience. The once occupied land now belonged to them, and they celebrated in ways they had not dared to in years. Songs filled the air, fires burned in joyful gatherings, and the people shared stories of their bravery and sacrifice. At the heart of it all stood Queen Ailira and Captain Jack. Together, they had led Valora's people through their darkest days, standing side by side, even when hope seemed lost. Now they walked through the villages, accepting thanks and well wishes from the people, who viewed them as heroes and symbols of Valora's rebirth. Jack felt a mixture of pride and contentment. He had come to Valora as a stranger, an outsider to a world he didn't understand. But he had found a purpose, a home, and most unexpectedly, a deep bond with its queen. As they strolled through the village, he looked at Ailira, marveling at her resilience and grace. "Ailira," he said quietly, stopping by a garden filled with blooming flowers, "this victory belongs to you and your people. You've shown strength that any world would respect. I'm honored to have been part of it." Ailira smiled softly, her gaze warm as she looked at him. "You are as much a part of Valora as any of us, Jack. You fought for us, guided us, and gave us hope. Without you, we may never have had the courage to stand against the Zirax. You're one of us now." The two shared a quiet moment, surrounded by the gentle sounds of celebration in the distance. For so long, they had focused solely on the fight, but now, with peace finally here, they allowed themselves to think of what might come next. Jack took a deep breath. "I never thought I'd feel at home anywhere but Earth. But here, with you and your people, I feel like I found something even better than home." Ailira's eyes softened, and she reached out, taking his hand in hers. "You've brought us peace, Jack, and you've brought something to me that I never expected, a friendship that grew into something deeper, something I never thought possible." She paused, her cheeks flushed slightly. "I want you to stay, Jack, not just as a hero of Valora, but as someone who will help us rebuild, guide us, and stand by my side." Jack felt a rush of happiness. He squeezed her hand, a smile spreading across his face. "There's nowhere else I'd rather be. If you'll have me, Ailira, I would be honored to stay by your side." With that, their unspoken bond was sealed. Ailira's heart swelled with joy as she realized she had found both a loyal friend and a partner in Jack, someone who understood her burdens and shared her dreams for a brighter future. The next few weeks were filled with hard work. Together, Jack and Ailira led efforts to rebuild the villages, restore farmland, and ensure that every family had the resources they needed. The people looked up to them not only as their leaders but as symbols of hope and unity. Jack worked alongside the villagers, helping to lift stones, build walls, and bring the community back to life. Ailira organized plans for the kingdom's future, meeting with her advisors to discuss how to ensure long-lasting peace. As the months passed, their bond grew deeper. Jack learned the Valorian language, customs, and traditions, becoming more a part of the land he had come to love. Ailira taught him the ways of her people, the stories of old, and the traditions that had shaped Valora's culture. They laughed, worked, and dreamed together, always by each other's side. One evening, as the stars glittered above them and the village quieted, Jack approached Ailira with a look of determination. He took her hands in his, feeling a surge of emotion as he looked into her eyes. "Ailira, you've given me a place here, a purpose. I want to make a new promise to you. Not just as your ally or friend, but as someone who wants to spend a lifetime here by your side." Ailira's eyes shimmered with happiness. She had long hoped for this moment, though she hadn't dared to speak it aloud. "Then let's promise each other, Jack, a promise of unity for our people and for ourselves." In a quiet ceremony attended by villagers and close friends, Ailira and Jack pledged their lives to each other. It was a simple vow, woven with the traditions of Valora and symbols from Jack's own world. The people celebrated with heartfelt joy, grateful to see their queen find happiness and their hero find a new home. As the celebration continued, Jack and Ailira looked out over the land they had fought so hard to protect. The fires of war were behind them, replaced by the warmth of a new beginning. They held each other close, their hearts filled with hope for a peaceful future. From that day forward, they ruled Valora together, a beacon of hope and unity. Their story became a legend, passed down through generations as a tale of love, courage, and the unbreakable spirit of a people who had found strength even in the darkest of times. Valora flourished under their rule, a kingdom rebuilt on the foundations of freedom and compassion. And at the heart of it all were Jack and Ailira, bound not only by their love but by their shared vision of a future where peace and happiness could thrive.